Fine. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the fifth annual Imagine This Women's International Film Festival. My name is Ilua Shaun Babalola. I'm a director and producer and founder of a production company called Do Global Productions, which focuses on the storytelling of Africa and its global diaspora through documentary. So I am joined today with these amazing filmmakers. And so if you guys would just introduce yourselves and then the films you're affiliated with. And Sean, we can start with you.
Okay, so my name is Sharon, and I'm the director of the film A Whore Like Me, as well as Yael. She's the director too. Yael, do you want to speak?
Hello, my name is Yael Shachar, and I directed Connect Me with Sharon, and I did the cinema shooting as well, and Sharon edit the film.
Hi, my name is Sonja Winterberg. I am the co-director of Made in Auschwitz, the Untold Story of Block 10. And my co-director, Sylvia Nagel, isn't here today, but I hope I can just represent our film as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your films. I thought both of them were incredible, and also congratulations on like having me in a fit of rage while watching them because they're just like so upsetting. But they both, have really important themes. So themes of like women's bodies and what happens when that autonomy is like taken away. But also just like getting justice for the past and kind of also giving these people who've experienced it a voice, which is also really important. So I just want to kind of jump in for both films. What do you have a personal connection to these stories, and what made you want to pursue them and make a film about them? And I guess Sonia, we can start with you.
Okay, so my semi-Jewish connection is my paternal grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor. So that is, I guess, the connection. The other is really that I'm a woman. And for us to make a film about these unheard stories from Auschwitz, I mean, there's many, I'm sure there are many more stories from Auschwitz that can still be told. But since the survivors are so advanced in age and they're dying, there's only a few left. So we felt it was important to give these women a voice. And also I've been working on war, the consequences of war and trauma for many years. So it was natural to, when we came across the story, to actually pursue it.
Awesome. And Sean or Yael?
We started filming in a community theater in the south of Tel Aviv in Israel. A group of women that participate in this group, and we filmed it for about 5 months. But then came Chila to the group, and we just fell in love with her. So we were completely taken by her story and her personality, and we knew that moment that our film has started then when we met her, and that was the beginning of our journey.
And how long were you filming with Chila?
About 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
And, wow. And how much of the 5 years actually made it into the film?
Wow. 10%.
Wow.
Wow. I think that's what happens when you, it took, we had to be with her a lot, because she had a very long journey in front of Israel State of Minister of Internal Affairs, and she wanted to get a certificate from Israel and a visa to stay here. So she had a long journey that went, like a roller coaster. And in the proceeding of the film, she got back to prostitution. So we had a long journey.
Yeah. Um, that's amazing because I know that the work and the dedication that takes for that. So congrats. So Sonia, your film, it's what I thought was interesting was that how relevant it still is. It's about these women in Auschwitz, but I think throughout time globally, this just happens. You have like the father of modern gynecology in the U.S. who did his research on enslaved Black women. You have like hysterectomies on Mexican women in ICE, and you have the women in the story. So I mean, what's interesting is that these women were accessible to actually speak to, who actually experienced it. And so I want to know like how you got them to talk and maybe build that trust and still maintaining like the sensitivity to the traumas that they might have with it.
Right. So, I mean, just as you said, the relevance today, I mean, I was amazed when we heard about the ICE prison in Georgia where women were forcibly sterilized just now, you know. It's it has to do with the power of whoever is in charge, I guess, over womenens' bodies, you know, and sort of it's I'm still amazed that it was possible then, it's possible now. I can't fathom it. And the women, it was interesting because after the war, many of them, of course, tried to get restitution to sort of tell, I guess, the public also that what had happened. And the way they were dealt with was just, again, appalling. I mean, it was the days you didn't talk about women's bodies or kind of like reproductive organs or anything like that. So I guess for the few survivors that we had of these experiments, they had learned that to really not talk about it. And so I guess, as we had with Lynn Wallace, with one of the survivors in the film, who then said, now I have sort of kept this in for so long, and just before I'm dying, I really have this wish to get my story out. And I think that is really, that was amazing for us that they entrusted us with their stories. But it was painful, and it was a long process with each of them. I think it was easier for them now that they were older. I mean, some of them had not talked to their families about it for many years. And especially for those who could not have children anymore. Again, Lynn Wallace, one of the Dutch survivors, she said, now even at her age, 80 plus, you know, everybody has children and grandchildren visiting, and you're there and you don't have any family who can sort of, who you can see grow up and sort of share precious moments with. And so I'm really glad that we could make this film.
And I noticed in the end credits, some of the women had passed by the time, you know, you were finished. So did any of them get to see kind of like the final product?
Only one of them, actually. So it's I agree with Yael. You know, you film for years. I mean, we started filming in, I think, 2014 or 2015, at a point in time where we had asked for funding, or we're looking into funding, and most interestingly, men that we talked to, you know, funders, commissioning editors, whoever, they just felt it was too gruesome a subject for film, and they were very reluctant of funding the film. And so we felt, because of the advanced age, we had to start filming. So we started filming even before we had money. And so you work on these films for years with very little budget. And I guess it's probably the same with your film, Yael, that if it's, I guess, a women's topic, you know, they will tell you, well, is it relevant? You know, that kind of like gets me angry already there. You know, is a whore relevant? You know, yes, damn. You know, it's like, and nobody sort of tells you that they're going to a prostitute. You know, everybody says, oh no, I'm not. You know, but we know from the numbers that people are invested in these stories. they don't like to look at the dark side. And I think that's where we as filmmakers, especially as women filmmakers, come in and have to sort of make these kind of films, no matter what.
Yeah, like once you see something, you can't unsee it. So you
Yeah.
have to.
You have to do
Absolutely.
something about it. Yeah, exactly.
And I'd like to add that probably as well. I think it's true for both of our films, is that you know, if it's difficult for us as an audience to watch these films, imagine these women going through that. You know, I think that for me was always something when I said, you know, you don't want to fund that film because you think it's too gruesome to watch. Well, these women survived, you know, so please do them the sort of give them the chance to tell their stories at least. You know?
Yeah.
And was there anything, you know, for both films in the process that maybe you were enlightened to from when you were, maybe you had a certain idea when you were starting, but then by the end, something had woken in you, or you just had a new way of looking at things? Did any of that happen for either film?
Yeah.
Sharon, you want to start?
Yeah.
I'll-
Yael, do you want to answer that?
I'll try. My internet connection is really bad, so I'm sorry for that. I'll try.
problem.
Yeah, actually, when we started, you hear me well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When we started to shoot Chila's life, she was in a state where she was clean of drugs and prostitution, and she was fighting the state of Israel to get her status, immigration status. But when we started to do that, there was a really weird. The immigration office asked her to go and to bring a certificate that she really were kidnapped. Now, when somebody is, when you been, she's a victim of trafficking in women. Now, when somebody is kidnapped, nobody gives you a certificate that they kidnap you, they just kidnap you. So obviously she didn't have nothing. And when they asked her for this weird, proof, she hired a detective. So that was a first minute when the film started really changed. And the second one, when she went back to prostitution. So there was 2 steps that the film completely changed, and you know, the commentary, we just follow what happened, and
I think also
story.
I want to add that also we thought at the beginning that the movie is about really women in prostitution, but as the movie went on, we understood that it's also about us as women allowing other men to enter our personal space and tells us how we look, how we dress, if we're young enough or good enough or thin enough. And we are silent about it, and we let people do that to us. And we saw Chila, how she deals with it, and we were so moved by her braveness that it really got us. And the second thing that happened is that we understood that it's also about post-trauma. Every one of us has a wound that he keeps on turning, arriving into it. We do circles in our lives, and we come back to our painful place again and again. And she did that, and we do it also. So it's also about that.
And that's something I actually really enjoyed about Chila, and the way you captured that is that she's very honest and straightforward about her circumstances and what this has done to her, but also trying to make the best of her situations, which is like often really hard to, in such a short amount of time, get all of these nuances for this one person. So that's really incredible. And Sonia, I didn't give you a chance to answer.
Yeah, so I think for us, the 2 changing or turning points in film were really when we realized we wanted to make this film about the women, you know, about sort of the survivors. And then we felt at some point that it was impossible to tell the story without the perpetrator, you know. And we've tried to find a way. I mean, he's no longer alive. He was sort of this doctor who was not as known as, say, other Nazi doctors like Mengele. And so I think we found a way to introduce his voice with an actor who really kind of like just reading from the chilling sort of protocols and letters, that kind of like balanced the film in a different way. And I think that kind of gives a different dynamic. And really, I think it's hard to tell a story of victims only when there's perpetrators and there's somebody who does that, you know? And so I think it's really helping the cause. I mean, we were very reluctant in the beginning, said, do we really want to give this guy a voice? And then we felt, and even the women said, you know, it's good to see how wrong it was. You know, you get kind of like a different sense. It's kind of like almost like I mean, yesterday we had the presidential debates in the US, you know, and finally you get to see the clown, you know, you get to see the also a bad person. Sort of, if you hear that voice, it gives you even more chills than if the victims sort of tell their narrative only. So I found that interesting. And the other was really, we worked with Israel. It's a German-Israeli co-production, and we had an Israeli editor, and Jaquette Goran, who was just really, really helpful in sort of telling the story. Yeah, in a way, I think that a German editor would not have been able to do. So we were really, really glad that happened. So I think there's so many, and Sharon and Yael said it earlier, there's so many steps in the process of a film that you make that you'll never know in the beginning where you end. I mean, you have this idea and then things change and happen. And so thank you for that question. I think that's really relevant.
Yeah, you just have to be able to pivot and just like keep going. And you actually touched on something I was gonna ask you, which was the directorial choices you kind of everyone made for the films in terms of storytelling. So you were saying, I was gonna ask you, why did you give Klauberg a voice in this when you could have made a film but without him at all? Mm-hmm. And so I guess since you answered that, I'll go to Sharon and Yael, just some of the decisions you made. There's a scene also. Oh, Sonia,
can I just add one more thing? So I think also, and that goes back also to today when I said earlier about these women in the prisons in Georgia, the ICE prisons that were forcibly sterilized. I think with medical experiments, another problem is, and I think that's why it was important to add that voice, is these are doctors whom we are supposed to trust. You know, if it's a gynecologist, I mean, this is also here, sterilization have to be done by a
medical practitioner,
gynecologist, you know. Mm-hmm. And so these are people that we entrust our bodies, you know, as Sharon said earlier, you open up, and you have to, even if it's by force, but you open up, and then you're so violated. So I think it was important to also give women this idea of self-worth and self-trust. And if you, in a very different situation, are not happy with a doctor, just like leave. You know, you don't have to give them the power. I mean, in any situation, we do have power. And I think to give women this voice to say, you can leave and nobody has the right to violate you. I think that is important for all our films, really. So,
absolutely, I agree with that. And speaking of power, this scene that I'm about to bring up. Actually, I'll let you answer, but I have my ideas of why you included it. So there's a scene in A Horror Like Me where Sheila is meeting with a client in her apartment. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, what was the process of creating that scene? Why did you think to include it? Was it risky? Was there any danger in it? And so I just want to hear about that.
Yael or
wow.
Do you want me to start?
Good.
I think we had an ethical problem with that scene because actually we are filming a client that doesn't know we are filming him. So we did have an ethical problem with that scene, but we got an actor to record his voice so we can change it, and we blurred his face because we didn't want to say that he was the bad guy. We wanted to talk about the mechanism of prostitution and the banality of this world. And that's the reason this scene is in the film.
That's in
Yael,
the. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry?
no, Yael,
No.
do you want to continue? Do you want to say
It
anything?
was one of the hardest day in this day. To do this film. It was one of the hardest scene to shoot for sure, because like Sharon said, we didn't want to say about someone specific. He's the bad guy, but we had the opportunity to show, because Chila's so brave, to show how it really look like from inside. So of course we didn't say no, and it was terrible. It was terrible to hide there and just
So you were there.
listen and be next room to all what happened there. I was in there's two rooms, so I was in the second room, and after, yeah, it was very hard and a bit traumatic, but I'm happy we did it. It was important, even it was too hard, not too hard, but even if it was super hard, I'm happy we did it, because
I think you
part of
can't
our job.
understand what it looks like from the inside until you see it. How much a body costs, 250 shekels. It's so painful. This change of money and for a woman's body.
The reason why
Can
I
I add to that?
kind of. Oh.
Sorry?
No, I was just
I
going
want
to
to
say
add
that.
something about what Sharon said. Wow.
Sorry, I think it's the delay.
And,
No, go ahead, because I'm getting you much
sorry.
later.
I just want to say that it was so something about it was so difficult, because it's like first of all, it's like you go into the shop and you buy just some things. You buy an object, and this is not an object, it's a person. And the second thing, that this client, he was really, really nice and polite, so it's make it even more hard, because he wasn't like a terrible person. He was just part of culture. That's what you do. Some men go to prostitution, they pay. So it's making it even harder, the fact that he was nice and polite and just really did it like a business between two older. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that. It's
yeah.
sort of this. Again, we talk about the commodification of bodies, of people. No matter if it was with in our film with Klauberg and all these companies that benefited from this. We have Siemens, we have Bayer. So it's really the commodification, the money exchange. Somebody is making sort of a transaction, and it's not sort of to the benefit of the women, even in the long term. It's sort of like there's winners, but it's not the women. So
do you feel like there was an element of maybe reclaiming power for Chila, because she was able to set her terms and tell this guy, listen, if you want this and this and this, this is how it's going to go? Or even when she was giving that example later on in the film about how a guy wanted her to, I think, maybe go twice in a half an hour, or maybe take her clothes off, and she was just like, no, I'm a human being, I'm not an object. Is that still maybe just an element of commodification, or is this just one of the few ways she can to just like have this autonomy over her body? No.
don't know.
Sharon.
And there's no wrong answers. I'm just very curious as to like how, you know, there's always different ways of interpreting it.
I didn't really understand the question until fullest. So
Yeah.
can you repeat that?
Sure. I just wanted to know if maybe it can be interpreted in the sense that while we are put in positions of where our bodies are commodified, can we is there a way we can reclaim that power? And was maybe
Okay.
Sheila doing that by setting her terms in that apartment with that man, or in other, you know, interactions with other men?
I think the in Chile state the role of the camera was very important to her, because the camera, she took a camera as well and started filming on her own stills. And I think owning the camera and started filming was kind of a testimony that the things are happening. And once she started doing that, she started claiming her body again, because now there is a witness. Now people can see what you're going through. And that was really a healing process for her.
Yeah, and I can imagine for in both films, Sona, you touched on it before, that these women just really wanted to tell the stories before they passed. So I think so. Both films are kind of unearthing this reality, or maybe a buried history or an institutional failure in these like respective countries. So what has the reaction or reception to it been so far, like when you're in Israel or when you're in Germany and showing these films? Sonia, you can go first.
So the reaction in general has been, I guess, mostly actually shocked by people who didn't know about it. We often have audiences who say it's almost unbearable to see a lot of the kind of like the torture sort of aspect of the film. It's I still find it difficult to listen to people to rationalize things, you know. So sometimes also, again, there's like the question of compensation, of was it too late? What, I mean, there's a lot of sort of, and I think that's probably with all the films that we make about women who in one way or another are victims, you will always have, especially in the male audience, people who will try to put some kind of rationale in that, you know. Also with, I mean, with prostitution, it's probably even another topic, but sort of here it's like what do you want, that pharmaceutical companies cannot use the outcome of the experiments. And we have an expert in the film, and she says that even the survivors wanted sort of to be able to, for pharmaceutical companies to use the results for the better good of women throughout history, but by the same token, let people know about how the results were obtained, you know. So a lot of it is, again, is storytelling, being truth, being witness, bearing witness. And I think that is what we have to do as storytellers, as filmmakers, and just, again, educate probably our audience. I think there's a lot of oblivious people out there. It's not I mean, those films are not popcorn Hollywood movies, you know. Yeah, and still they're important, and so you have to, I always feel kind of like this urge to excuse myself for it not being kind of like the typical entertainment, but it also has to do with the reactions we sometimes get. Sure. Yeah.
And how about you two, Sharon and Yael?
Yael?
Okay. The premiere in Israel was amazing. First of all, after the lights came up, to see all the audience standing up. Oops, sorry. All the audience standing up for Sheila. It was a moment that we're dreaming about it for years. That, you know, she will get back the respect she owns. And the other thing that happened in this day, that one of the best lawyer office in Israel, one of the best, the strongest lawyer office in Israel, took her case pro bono. And they start to fight with her in front of the immigration office to get her status. So it's become like a video activism, because after they start to help her, the police recognized her as a victim of trafficking in women, and that was a very big meaning for Chila. First of all, mentally, emotionally, because for years nobody believed her, or not, I don't know if nobody, but so many people said, maybe you make up the story, you know, and it's so terrible to be survival, and then nobody, most of the people don't believe you. So now she had this improved, that everything she said, all the details, everything she gave to the detective, he improved that everything was right. And then she got this certificate from the police, so other women that are victim from trafficking in women can go and also maybe get some right from the Israeli government. She's still on her process. They still treat her, the state of Israel tried to get rid of her. But now after the film, there is a big group of people behind her that fight with her together. So it's amazing to see how this whole movement start to be after the film came out. So
It also has to do with the name of the movie, A Whore Like Me, because once you say it, you have to participate in it, in being a whore like me. You're part of it. It's a quote from the film that Sheila said, but it's also says. Unconsciously and consciously, it makes you feel a part of it, to create a social responsibility. It's our responsibility as well. So
yeah, I agree. I can't add anything else. I'm just like, I agree with everything that's been said. So, I mean, is there a way people can, are there any initiatives attached for both films where people can support it? Maybe support the women involved, or, you know, support causes that are aligned with it, with these films?
Well, I can just, well, for our film, it's really, I think the one, or yeah, for me, the most important organization one can support is really the Auschwitz Memorial in Poland. And that really has to do with that they're trying to preserve a place that sort of is authentic and still gives the possibility for education. And I think that with all the women that we worked with, that was what they wanted, that the world must know. And so supporting Holocaust education causes is, I guess, the way to go for our cause. So.
Great, amazing. And Sharon?
Yeah, actually there is but I haven't been preparing for these questions. I haven't prepared for it. So, but there is a website that donates to Chila and other victims, and maybe I'll put it in the chat afterwards if people wants to help in a way.
Absolutely. And so what's next, you know, after, now that you have these films out in the universe, what's next for your, you know, projects? Sonia?
So I'm currently working on a film about a German photojournalist who was killed in Afghanistan in 2014. Anja Niedringhaus, she was a Pulitzer Prize winning photographer, and she and her colleague got attacked, and she was killed, and her colleague, a Canadian journalist, Kathy Gannon, she survived. And so it's a very different story, but I think for me, it's really telling women's stories. There's so many out there, and it's really my passion to work on these stories.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think someone has to be telling these stories and making these films. So yeah, as many as you can that's in you. Just keep going with it. And how can people support it, or maybe follow you or follow the process in that?
I think for me and Sylvia, it's really sort of we're on Facebook and on Twitter, so I guess just follow. Yeah, for me it's my name or Experiment Days on Twitter and Instagram, and so yeah, I think that's kind of like the best way to keep like watching women's movies, women's documentaries. I think that's it benefits all of us. So
absolutely. And Yael, Sharon.
Sharon, do you have a website or
can you hear me?
Yeah, we have also we have you can see it on Facebook. A Whore Like Me, it has a page, and we keep updating it, and that's all for now.
Good. Hey, I mean, I'm sure you need like a nap or two after working on this, so that's fine. Okay, well, that's it. I mean, thank you so much for sharing these films, making these films. Oh, go ahead, Sharon. You had something?
No, I just want to add something as also about us as women. I think both Yael and I are mothers of little girls, and we started noticing after we made the film that what kind of messages do we pass to our kids. And I think not consciously, but unconsciously, we tell them to be nice, be a good person, don't make a fuss. And we noticed that sentences like that really helps them being people or women that can say no when they are older. And we have to be very careful about messages like that. And we were stunned that we are doing that. It's very important to be a good person, but you have to learn your boundaries and what you can or can't do, and tell people this is not what I want to do, even if it makes a fuss sometimes. That we can make a fuss.
Yes, I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, can I add to that, Sharon? I think it's really such an important point. That I have two kids too, and I think our families are usually impacted by the films we make, and so that is another aspect that it kind of like makes you reevaluate your life, the way you kind of like have made decisions, the way you interact with people, with your children, with your family. So yeah, I can only second what Sharon said.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about films like these, is that it reminds you that you can't have fear in like the truth, and speaking your truth, and just acknowledging that, you need to use your voice. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, everyone.
Nice to meet you, Sonia.
Yeah, we have to keep in touch, Sharon. It's great to meet you. Yeah. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.